It looked like a snap of the fingers was all it would take for Theresa May to bolster her Conservative majority ahead of Brexit negotiations. But now, 1 week ahead of a general election, the dream of a Tory landslide has faded as the Prime Minister's opponents continue to remind voters of the hard reality of a country that's had a decade of austerity. She's still in the lead, but only just. Why is it so close? And why has a Labour leader decried as uncharismatic and out of touch, both with his party and the nation, now have a shot at being the next Prime Minister? 11 months after the Brexit referendum, what would an upset by Jeremy Corbyn mean for the UK and for Europe? Today in the France 24 debate, the Conservative lead narrows. With us to talk about it, a Conservative Mark Pritchard, who's running for Parliament in Shropshire, west of Birmingham. Thank you for being with us in the debate. From London, we're also joined by freelance journalist and Corbyn supporter Michael Segaloff. Welcome to the show.
Hi, good evening. From
Coventry, Wyn Grant, who teaches at Warwick University. Thank you for joining us. And the view from Stockholm from Frederick Eriksson. He's the director of the Brussels-based European Centre for International Political Economy. Welcome to the France 24 debate. Thank you. The France 24 debate, where you can join the conversation on Facebook and Twitter, hashtag F24debate. Remember 1997? No, not the general election that brought Tony Blair's New Labour to power. Remember the snap election of 1997, right here in France. Then President Jacques Chirac figured he would bolster his Conservative majority, but it was not to be. Instead, the socialists came to power. We're going to see if history is going to repeat itself this time around on the other side of the channel. First of all, before we look at the poll numbers, let me ask Wyn Grant, did you think at this point in time it would be this close?
No, I didn't think it would be that close. Of course, the polls are telling us very different things, and that depends on the assumptions they build into their models. And the key there, I think, is how you model turnout, because that could be a big factor in determining the outcome, particularly whether young people who overwhelmingly support Jeremy Corbyn actually come out and vote.
Yeah, the young people is of course, a crucial factor. Let's look at the numbers. The latest poll of polls gives the Tories a 9-point advantage. Yeah. With 1 week to go, that's still a sizable lead, but it's quite a plummet from the better than 20-point lead back when Prime Minister May called the election less than 6 weeks ago. There you see that graph there. Of course, a percentage of the national vote doesn't tell you who's going to win in a first-past-the-post system. For that, you need to remember that it's not one race, but 660. Currently, the Conservatives have a 5-seat majority on 330 seats. Now, this is a YouGov poll published in the Daily Telegraph, and you'll see that their number of seats would dwindle to 310. Wyn Grant, 1 week to go. Why is it narrowed this way?
Well, I think Jeremy Corbyn has had a much better campaign than was anticipated. I think in the period before that, as leader of the opposition, he wasn't seen as very effective, but I think he has campaigned well. A lot of voters are saying they think he's honest and authentic and sincere, so he's done well. On the other hand, of course, Theresa May had some problems with the Conservative manifesto, the pledges about social care, when subsequently she made what was seen to be a U-turn, which I think had some effect on her credibility as a leader, which was the centrepiece of her campaign.
That U-turn on social benefits, of course, turning out to overshadow Brexit. Is it true to say that Brexit's not been a big issue on the campaign trail?
It's not been as big of an issue as the Conservatives would like it to have been. Today, of course, we've seen both Theresa May and Jeremy Corbyn addressing the issue of Brexit, and of course it is a very major challenge for the United Kingdom, so it will play a part, I think, in the final outcome. The Conservatives would like it to play a bigger part, but of course the campaign has turned to questions about education, the health service, and so on.
Mark Pritchard, there's this sense that the British are experiencing fatigue after so many years of having to tighten their belts. And when you saw this Conservative Party manifesto, did it ring alarm bells for you?
No, not at all. I mean, Jeremy Corbyn wants to portray our manifesto as another and our potential new government as another 5 years of austerity. You'd expect him to say that. I think, Brexit is key to this election. I mean, I was at a public meeting yesterday and I asked the audience, who do you think that Chancellor Merkel and Juncker and Tusk and other leaders of EU nations would want to be negotiating Brexit terms with, Jeremy Corbyn or Theresa May? And even Labour supporters in the audience accepted that Theresa May, with all of her experience, would be somebody who would negotiate a Brexit deal that was best for Britain. What we heard from Jeremy Corbyn today is he wants to negotiate a Brexit deal that is best for Britain and for Europe. Now, I don't have an issue with somebody that is on the Council of Europe wanting to have a mutual interest negotiation and Brexit deal, but I think it did give a little insight into the fact that Jeremy Corbyn, apart from not having any government experience, would be far weaker. And that's why the central message of this campaign, which is resonating on the doorsteps, is that there's a clear choice: either a strong leader on Brexit and other things beyond Brexit with Theresa May, or a weak leader with Jeremy Corbyn, both Brexit and with the UK economy. And all I would say, again, in the public meeting last night, I said that dogs bark, cats meow. And if you look at history, the Labour Party always ruined the British economy.
Michael Sigaloff, your thoughts. Is Brexit the issue?
No, I don't think Brexit's the only issue that's characterising this election campaign. I think that the Conservative Party maybe hoped it would do, hence why the manifesto is kind of empty and vapid, and we've seen U-turns in it already. And the Labour manifesto, which makes reference to Brexit, also speaks about important social issues, about education, the health service, housing. And I think that's what this election has been. It's been an election called by an arrogant Prime Minister, hoping to uphold her majority and increase it, with little preparation. And in fact, now that the campaign is underway, we're seeing the Labour Party coming in with policies that are liked by the United Kingdom, policies that are resonating with people thinking, in polls recently, that hard-working families are better off under Jeremy Corbyn, the National Health Service better off under Labour and Jeremy Corbyn. And I think that that's what's being exposed here. And I think it's really interesting that the Conservative Party went into this election hoping just to use a few sound bites, strong and stable government, the only real thing we heard here. But actually, last night, there was a leadership debate between supposedly the seven leaders of the major UK political parties. And the Prime Minister, Theresa May, didn't even show up. And it does beg the question. We hear lots about how Theresa May is going to be a great negotiator, how she's someone who can lead the United Kingdom into Brexit. But if she can't debate her fellow party leaders, it does raise the question how she's going to be able to negotiate a good deal for Britain when we leave the European Union.
Yeah, she was the notable absent at that seven-way debate that took place. Jeremy Corbyn, in the end, deciding to represent Labour. The Prime Minister's absence became the main talking point of the evening, and she addressed that before it happened.
I think debates where the politicians are squabbling among themselves doesn't do anything for the process of electioneering. I think actually it's about getting out and about, meeting voters and hearing directly from voters.
Wyn Grant, is that explanation holding up?
Not entirely, I think. I mean, it was clearly a smart move on Corbyn's part to turn up for the debate. I mean, it did generate into rather a shouting match with leaders talking across each other, and of course it would have been very difficult for Theresa May in those circumstances to appear as a statesman-like person, so I can see why she didn't want to go, but I think the explanation she offers is not entirely convincing.
Let's ask Frederick Eriksson in Stockholm. What's your view of Theresa May with 1 week to go before the snap general election?
Sorry, what?
What's your view of Theresa May as Prime Minister and as a campaigner?
Well, I mean, I can't say that I've been following the campaign that closely, but I mean, like previous speakers have said, she has had a difficult few weeks with a Tory manifesto that was launched and later was seen as she had to sort of row back on some of the policies that they were outlining. And someone who, of course, wanted to campaign on being stable, being strong, it looked rather if she was being confused and weak. If that's going to influence the outcome of the election or not, that I don't know. But I think it's fair to say that Jeremy Corbyn has had a far more successful campaign than she has.
a more successful campaign than she has so far. And to Mark Pritchard's point that she would be the better negotiator on Brexit.
Well, I mean, again, it's not need to sort of wade into the British debate to make judgments about who would be the best negotiator or not. I think when you look at it from the abstract, I don't think personality is going to play that sort of important role for the outcome of the negotiations between the EU and the UK. I think we all already have a fairly good idea on where the end result is going to be on trade issues and a host of other issues that are going to sort of deal with what type of relation that Britain and the EU is going to have with each other in the future.
No matter who wins?
Well, I mean, I think sort of it's pretty clear already that we're going to have what is in popular terms called a hard Brexit, which means Britain is going to leave the single market and the customs union, and the type of agreement they're going to have with each other in the future will be a free trade agreement, like, for instance, the one that the EU has negotiated with Canada over the past years, or the one that the EU was trying to negotiate with the Americans. And that's the type of relation that will be there in the future. And it doesn't matter whether it's Jeremy Corbyn or Theresa May that are going to negotiate it, because these type of agreements tend to follow a sort of a template. And at least from the viewpoint of Brussels and the EU, you don't determine what goes in and what goes out of these agreements depending on sort of who's the prime minister in the country.
Now, during that candidates debate, the Labour leader clashed with the Conservative Party representative, the Home Secretary Amber Rudd, most notably over austerity and potential cuts in services for the poor.
I would just say this, since Amber Rudd seems so confident that this is a country at ease with itself. Have you been to a food bank? Have you seen people sleeping around our stations? Have you seen... because of your government's conscious decisions on benefits.
Jeremy, if you want people out of food banks, ways to have people not using food
bags.
There's
two of you coming at me now. I'm not sure which I'm going to take.
That they can have good jobs.
Mark Pritchard, on the back of that exchange, when we covered 11 months ago the campaign for the Brexit referendum, there was this definite resentment directed, and it sort of sometimes seemed blurred, both at London and Brussels. Do you get the sense that perhaps Theresa May, when she called that snap election, underestimated just how much that resentment towards London is still there?
Well, I don't accept that. I mean, London is the capital city of the United Kingdom, the financial centre that looks after most of the pensions of UK pensioners and generates a huge amount of revenue for the economy that pays for the public services that Jeremy Corbyn was just alluding to. I think the key message apart from Brexit is the issue of the economy. Now, Jeremy Corbyn, his would-be finance minister, admitted to carrying a certain communist text around in his pocket just a couple of weeks ago. Now, Jeremy Corbyn and I work very closely together on human rights, and I have a huge amount of time for Mr. Corbyn personally, although he never mentions Venezuela, by the way. But the point is this. If you look at the Venezuelan economy, if you look at the Cuban economy now being slightly more liberalized, if you look at the command and control economies of the former Eastern Europe, which are now, of course, many of them part of the European Union now, those economies failed. So to go back beyond the hard left, beyond even Michael Foot, a former Labour leader, and to suggest that somehow that was going to create a more prosperous Britain for the voters that are going to vote next Thursday, I think is a fallacy. So I think that is being exposed, and people that really drill down into what the detail of the election manifesto, Labour's economic policy within the manifesto means for them, that will have an impact as well. That said, there are a lot of young people, young voters, first-time voters, not just attracted by the abolition of tuition fees at universities, which Labour suggests that they would do if they could afford it, but also they don't have a living memory of the past Labour government that was a hard left government. I'm not about Tony Blair's government, but the hard left government of the 1970s, when the rubbish wasn't collected, the dead weren't even buried because of a command and control economy that had failed and failed dramatically.
Michael Segeloff, what do you say about how Britain would look under A Corbyn who said he would stick by leaving the European Union and who would come into power with state coffers empty.
Well, let's start with the premise that if we're talking about economics and finance here, there are two manifestos that we're considering of who could, take government. Two parties who might have a leader who'll be soon prime minister, and one party have created a fully costed manifesto, one that has been stuck to throughout the campaign, and one that dictates where money being spent will come from, and one that hasn't, and that's the Labour Party that's been able to produce a costed manifesto. So initially, my concern is hearing Conservative politicians and supporters talking about the Labour leadership's ability to run an economy when the Conservatives can't even put together a costed manifesto. But in terms of what's on offer here, there's definitely no question the Labour Party are talking about investing in this country, about spending in this country, and about creating a fairer, more equal society. And I think that's what's really important here. If we look at where money's being spent, we look at where this manifesto is targeting. It's targeting the health service, which is currently in the midst of a crisis. It's targeting education, which has seen students riddled with £50,000 worth of debt just in the last 10 years. And these are the kind of key areas in infrastructure investment that the Labour Party are talking about. And I think what I would suggest is, if we're going to take lessons on how to run an economy, we need to find a party that can put together a costed manifesto first.
All right, we're going to pick up on these points when we come back. We're going to take a very quick break. Stay with us. You're watching the France 24 debate.